Who is Meghan Markle? Hello, welcome back to this next segment of Who is Meghan Markle? This is Gary, and we're looking at who are Meghan's parents. Last week we had a look at Thomas, her father, and this week it's the turn of Doria, her mother. So, Doria, Meghan's mother, was born in 1956 in Cleveland, Ohio, and moved to Los Angeles when she was very young. A really big change early on in life. From what we can piece together, her childhood was anything but a stable traditional family setup. Her parents separated and she grew up around a mix of half-siblings on both sides of the family. We don't have exact dates for when all of this happened, but the picture that emerges is of a childhood marked by change and uncertainty rather than long-term stability. Something that eventually, inevitably, shapes how a person experiences life and relationships later on. She has a maternal half-brother, Joseph. He was born in 1949 and died in 2021. Half-sister, Sondra Johnson, born in 1952. And a paternal half-brother, Alvin, who is much younger because her father married again. She also has some extended family. Doria has spoken at times about experiencing hardship in her childhood, and that may reflect a very real emotional experience. At the time, biographical accounts also mention family trips, including visits to places like Disney and even Hawaii, which suggests that material deprivation wasn't necessarily the central issue. What this points to isn't a contradiction as much as a difference between external comfort and internal stability. You can grow up with opportunities and still feel unsettled if the family structure itself feels insecure or unpredictable. However, this idea of emotionally experienced hardship in childhood is something that we don't think we'll delve into fully in this video because it's a whole other subject. And I think it's a very, very important subject which I'll definitely concentrate a chapter in the book. A chapter about people's experiences of hardship in childhood, which is their experience of hardship, which from the outside other people don't see. However, it is important because these types of experiences of childhood hardships are something that I believe very much binds Meghan and Harry together in their stories. So, back to Doria. So, her family sort of broke down because of disputes over inheritance after the father's death, and that created distance from the relatives. I understand it was something about the father's house, although you could bring me details if you want and if you know something. It's interesting also that she fell out with her family, and that might explain part of the way that she functions, but also Meghan. And so for Meghan, maybe she also feels it's okay to fall out with your family, with your half-brother and your half-sister and your father and who knows who else. So, back to Doria. So let's go to her education. She was at Fairfax High School in Los Angeles because she went to Los Angeles when she was quite young. Soon after that, she started to work as a temporary assistant makeup artist in television. She also worked in General Hospital, that's the TV series. Anyway, that's where she met Thomas. Now, what was interesting, at least to me, is that there's no specific information about her being trained as a makeup artist or to go to any school for being a makeup artist. It's one of the things we'll come back to. So she gets married to Thomas, gives birth to Meghan, then all of a sudden, in the mid-80s, she becomes a travel agent and a small business owner. Now, to me, this is a bit odd, and I see no logic of how she went from being a makeup artist to being a travel agent, and then, at the end of the 1990s, she left for England. I think it was related to her own travel agency business. Maybe she had English clients. I don't know. So she stayed in England for a number of years. So how could she be available as a mother? Don't ask me. Possibly 2 or 3 years. Again, details are very difficult to come by. During which time she eventually went bankrupt in England. She was nearly £43,000, which I suppose is about $60,000 in debt. I haven't worked out how much that is in today's money, but it's quite a lot of money. But she had also another number of problems linked to it. So she came back to America. I have no idea what happened in England, whether she had a limited company, whether she was personally responsible or what happened. I do know that the financial situation when she came back to Los Angeles was problematical because there was an eviction proceedings in Los Angeles. That's what I understand. It was over unpaid rent, which grew to be a bit of a mess. So anyway, the business is closed down, and then she worked a variety of jobs, and at some point she started to study for a bachelor's in psychology, and after that a master's in social work. There's no public information about how Doria financed her studies, either a bachelor's degree or a master's in social work. What we can say that, as a mature student returning to university in the US, she most likely followed a very common path, using a mix of student loans or grants, working alongside her studies, and possibly some needs-based university support. That's how a lot of people in her situation manage it. So, she restarted studying, first the bachelor's, then the master's degree. I can assure you it's not nothing, especially when you do this later in life. I can vouch for that because I've been there. I started studying for my bachelor's degree in psychology at 38 years old. My master's at 42. At the time, the bachelor's was actually something called a licence in Switzerland, and it took 4 years. And after that, after my master's, it took another 5 years before straight registration. So I've nothing but respect for Doria to have succeeded all that. And then she got to be a licensed social worker. So she passed an exam in 2015, more than likely 3 or 4 years of working as a social worker on some level to be able to pass that exam. And for a few years, she was employed as a social worker in mental health services and doing mental health counselling. So that's something that since she was trained for and she was appropriate in, and that then she stepped down, so she says, from the social work position following increased media attention due to the marriage. And that is where I think we'll have to leave it for this week. I've promised myself to keep the segments no longer than about 10 minutes, so I'll stop here for this week. Tune in next time for the second part of Who is Doria? Don't forget to like, share, comment and ring the bell. Next week, the second part of Doria. Bye for now. Kindest, Gary.